And welcome to YouTOONS, episode 1. That's our show. See you later, ladies and gentlemen. Just kidding. My name's Jon Dunning. This is a brand new endeavor, and I'm joined by my co-host. I'm so thankful to have you here, sir, Mr. Kody Smith.
How's it going, everybody? We are here to talk about cartoons, namely Nicktoons, from the earliest up until kind of like halfway through Nickelodeon's run, I'd say. But it's going to be a lot of fun. We did some research, got some clips ready for y'all, and it is going to be a great time.
We already have some people in the chat for better or worse. Just kidding. It's Mr. Coach and Dr. Efren. So happy to see them there. Kody, why are we doing this thing?
We're doing this because we are man children and we like animation and we're just I know we've had many talks on Twitter where we're going back and forth on like oh man, I just saw this and that and this and it was so great and I mean we just kind of snowballed into this where we were like, you know what, we need to talk about this. We need to get together and just really do this the only way podcasters know how. And that's to drink alcohol and reminisce on the internet.
Shout out to alcohol, right?
Yes. You might even say that alcohol is
smashing.
Oh, yes. This is...
That's my favorite audios thing that I've got pulled up.
Yeah, we actually have some like drops and like... What do they call effects drops or something? I don't know. This is gonna be a high class show, ladies and gentlemen. To sum that up, also I have a bottle of wine to help me through this as well. Some collusion, sir. What do you have with you?
I've got a Old Forester. It's a Kentucky bourbon. It's 100 proof, and it makes me feel nice and warm inside. So this is some great stuff, and highly recommend it if you are a fan of bourbon.
Perfect, which I am. If it has alcohol, I'm there. Dr. Efren said we should be eating a bowl of cereal. Next time maybe. But yes, this is not just going to be a Nicktoons show either, or a Nicktoons podcast, so to speak. This is just kind of the first volume, and what we're going to do, we're going to be covering, WB. We're going to be covering, all the Tiny Toons and stuff like that, Fox Kids. So all those Batman animated series fans, if you don't know, I kind of like the Joker. Mark Hamill is God. So we'll be covering that as well. Also some cartoon movies. So a lot in the future for this podcast. I am so excited. I haven't been this excited about a new show in a very long time. So yeah, should we just jump into it, sir?
Yeah. One quick note: if nobody likes it, we'll never do it again.
If nobody likes it, we'll still probably do it. We won't do it live. We'll just I'll just record it and watch it by myself in my closet.
Yeah, we'll record it for our own listening. There'll be 2 to 3 listens, and the third listen will be somebody who knocked it off one of our servers or something like that. Exactly.
Yeah, we're not doing this for you guys. We're doing this for us. Yeah, X-Men animated series. Oh yeah, I can't wait for that show. You're gonna have to pull me away from the mic on that one, sir.
Not a problem. I don't have as much to say about the X-Men animated show as I do Batman the animated series, which is probably one of the best cartoons ever made. So we'll have to like do those on the same episode, so that way we can fight each other for mic dominance.
Oh, that's man. See, we're already brainstorming live. Yes. So, sir, let's kick it off. We all started in what, 19. Let's go way back before we start really breaking down episode or show by show, episode by episode. I'm old, as are you, correct?
Yeah, I'm definitely. I'm not as old as you, but I'm getting there.
No one's as old John. But Old Forester over there is. You're still a child of the '80s, though, correct?
I was born in '89, so I just
okay.
I caught the era that is considered the '80s, which is like '85 to '95. So I was kind of in there, and basically like it was one of those things that the earliest memories I have are like coming back from first grade and like watching Doug and watching Rugrats. So like this is basically everything that I spent my afternoons and evenings rotting my brains to, because this was before video games were widespread. This is before we all had the internet and an ability to just like dive into an endless search on Reddit. And so this was how kids at least my age, in the late 80s, early 90s really spent our time. And we'd go back to the playground and be like, oh snap, did you see that new episode of Ren and Stimpy? There's a giant helmet on Ren's head and he sang and it was beautiful. Like that's the stuff that happens. So I mean that's how we spent our time, and now we just play Angry Birds.
Oh God, for Pokemon Go. But for sure that was pretty much, yes. And I am quite a bit older. I mean, just by like 5 years. I was a child of '83, so it wasn't just the Nicktoons back then either. I mean, I was so into Double Dare. I was into like Temple or Legend of the Lost Temple, which I think they've revived, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure. But there was just Nickelodeon. We came from very much a Disney house, and unfortunately my sister Becky couldn't join us tonight, but I'm sure she'll be on one of these in the future, because we're such a Disney house. She worked at Disney. We had family members. She's a Disney artist. She does makeup for Disney on occasion, but Nickelodeon was also something that I was very much into, even like the whole Salute Your Shorts and Hey Dude era. This was all my childhood. So when I heard we get to talk about things like Doug, Rugrats, Rocco's Modern Life, I mean, it's just all in on that. So I think on the docket first is probably one of our favorites, if not my favorite, and that is Doug, right?
Well, so before we get into Doug, I do want to talk a little bit about the history of Nickelodeon itself. So one thing is Nickelodeon and Disney both at the kind of around the same time, late 80s, early 90s was when both Nickelodeon and Disney kind of had the same ideas of like, we want to make cartoons that aren't meant to sell something. Because if you think about cartoons of the 80s, which I'm sure you've watched and I've watched a million times, like Transformers, G.I. Joe, He-Man, like all those cartoons were made to sell things. Like they weren't made for the story of G.I. Joe. I mean, now we see it as the story of G.I. Joe. But the main thing was, basically the writers were given toys and they were like, make this a show so we can sell these toys. And up through the 1990s, there's actually something really cool called or not really cool, I guess, but the educational television mandates. They're kind of responsible for the more style commercials, as well as the at the end of G.I. Joe where he was like, don't play in the wash, and basically it was a mandate that Saturday morning cartoons had for the better part of the early 90s. In part, see here,
Captain Planet was a big the more commercial by itself.
Yes, definitely. And so it was in broadcast stations in 1996. Nickelodeon and other children-oriented cable networks like Disney and Cartoon Network were never subject to those mandates because they did not broadcast over the air. So they had the advantage of not having to give up part of their schedule to those excess, the basically added commercials that they had to do to maintain these educational mandates.
I totally remember this too, because they played in the middle, because they would basically, each episode would run about 11 minutes long, and then afterwards you would get these little snippets of so your favorite character would be in peril or something, and then someone would kind of run up and be like, see, Timmy, this is why we don't talk to strangers type thing.
And so the mandate was that they had to have 3 hours of their programming be educational. And again, so Nicktoons, Disney, all these guys dodged that because they were not broadcasting over the air. Cartoons like MGM, the early Warner Brothers stuff, they all had to have that because they weren't, they weren't broadcast. They were broadcast. They weren't like cable. So, but yeah, so we are going to go into and talk about one that's close to my heart because I was this kid when I was in middle school. And that is Doug. So Doug kind of, to me, idealized pre-internet junior high and high school anxieties. Kind of like overthinking things. The series ran from 1991 to 1994, had 7 seasons and 117 episodes, and was nominated for 2 Daytime Emmys. Yeah, it's such a great song. It was created by Jim Jenkins, who also wrote and produced many Nick Jr. programs, several of the Richard Scarry animated shows, and also ended up writing for the 100.
Sorry, it's such a Zach Galifianakis part, right?
Yeah, I could totally see him like
like he's just
Well,
dancing around, pinching nipples and stuff.
Yeah, so I could totally see him being Mr. Dink, like playing Mr. Dink. He would be perfect because Mr. Dink was always like, oh, come here, very expensive. So like he's kind of the perfect size. Like, you know, Mr. Dink wasn't like fat; he was just a kind of bigger guy, you know, middle age, you know, 50, and maybe in his 50s or 60s, and just kind of like has money and just could buy nice shit and
sure. So, well, and Doug, now it's the name is escaping me, but Doug was played by one of my favorite Nicktoon voice actors of the 80s or of the 90s. And that's, do you have that handy?
Yeah. So this is actually not just a classic Nicktoons voice artist, but just kind of a voice artist that's so prolific.
Yes.
Hard pressed to not find him on your favorite show, and that is Billy West.
Thank you, Billy West.
So Billy West actually did many voices. He did Doug Funny, Roger Klotz, Boomer and Joe, who were Roger's like little cronies that kind of followed him around all the time. And he also did the Bluff DJ radio host. But he also did so many more characters. Like I literally most of this research was done from IMDb. So just the sheer amount of background characters that he voiced on top of those 5 major characters is just mind-boggling.
Yeah. And let's talk about some of the themes that Doug dealt with. Like you said, it hit home because it was such an adolescent show, and it's at the point of adolescence when you're, 10 years old going into, maybe 11 years old, like 6th grade going to 7th grade. It's a huge leap and bounds. Let me just tell you, like from elementary school, I was kind of like the fat kid that didn't really like, I had friends, but I didn't, I had the crazy ugly hair. I was just a big theater geek even back in the day. And then I moved from California and I started 6th grade in Vegas, and I had a girlfriend the first day. It's just like, that's the type of things where it's just like, not to say it was like, oh, look at me, I was so amazing, I had all these girls or whatever, but that's the kind of big jump. And that's the kind of big jump in life that Doug kind of captures, because you could see it where he was just kind of this little kid, and then suddenly, a very tan girl with very blonde hair walks by the name of Patti Mayonnaise, and that just completely makes you grow up maybe faster than you're ready to.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, when I was watching Doug, I was in like 1st, 2nd grade. And so when I saw Doug, I kind of was of the mind that like, this is what high school is supposed to be. So, I kind of, or what junior high is supposed to be. And so like, I feel like Doug kind of made me into Doug, because like, so, it was just like one of those things where, like I had a lot of just like, I was this, scrawny little, nobody kid. And I was like, oh snap. Like, I'm gonna have to worry about girls. Like, I'm gonna have to like, I'm gonna have I have to balance friends at school and at home. Like, what is this? And I mean, Doug basically, I'll sum up the plot of every Doug episode. Doug is presented with a problem, like turning in a paper on time. Doug gets influenced by people about how badly he could do it. And then he imagines all these wild scenarios as to how this paper could be turned in the worst possible way. And then he just does it and everything's fine.
Right. It's all about the hype with Doug. Everything is the hype. And like you said, he's very easily influenced. I like that they touched on kind of a multiracial friendship with Skeeter. I mean, it's funny to say because he's a blue guy, but it's kind of great because not a lot of shows at the time were doing that. And his friend is multicultural or whatever. And Judy is very much that kind of, his sister is very much that kind of think outside of the box beatnik, so to speak. From that day, I guess she would, in that time, she would be considered like a new wave kid or something like that. But something that's not very outwardly popular. So you could see all these kind of his best friend's a dog, all these kind of roadblocks placed in the way, and his parents just being kind of cookie cutter, stereotypical, but very they were very
family, like very
yeah.
very like, oh, how is school, here's dinner, everything's fine, just kind of be a safe place that you could come home and not feel that those pressures are coming back onto you.
Right. And their last name is Pickles. Or no, it's funny. Who is Pickles? That's Rugrats. Never mind, we'll get there. But yeah, it's like you said, it's just him overcoming mental obstacles, mental hurdles that other people put in front of him. And then once he just does it, it's great. One of the big episodes that I don't know why I loved this one so much, but it was when he went away for a weekend to grandma's house and he just ate like shit and put on a ton of weight. And so the whole time it's just like him thinking how much of a fat ass he is and him trying to work it off. That for some reason, that's one of my favorite episodes of Doug.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of them because it's like I said, I was Doug, and one of the biggest things that I struggled with because partially like my family was super religious, so it was super weird about like dating. So like there wasn't dating, there was courting, but then like I'm watching TV and I'm seeing like all these kids who are struggling with it outside of the excess regulations that I had, and I was like, oh, like I am not prepared for this at all. So I've actually got a clip pulled up of Doug and Patti's first date. So now this is all going to be audio, so you're not going to see it, obviously. But basically, the basics are that they show up to the movie theater, and Doug doesn't really know if it's a date or not. And this is basically me.
It's not a date. It's not a date. It's not a date. It's not a date. Hey, Doug! Hurry or we'll miss the show.
So he keeps getting kind of like mixed signals.
She's dressed up. Okay, it's a date.
Two,
please. Thank you.
One, please.
Comes down.
Thank you.
She buys her own ticket.
Come on, Dad, we'll be late.
But I. Okay, it's
so
not
just a little bit longer. So they go into the theater, right, and they're watching the movie. He sees her hand on the armrest. He's going for it. He's gonna go hold her hand because this is a date. Hold girls' hands.
Charles, society will never accept.
God, I'm 10 years old again.
She moved her hand out of the way to rub her nose when he went to go put her hand
to our hearts.
But we're so different. We come from different worlds.
Of course, the screen is playing something like that.
From a rich, powerful family. Whereas I'm a giant lizard creature from planet C.
I wanted to end on that part. But
perfect.
Just the idea of like he doesn't know if this is a date or not because Patti's nice to him because they're friends. And so like obviously there's going to be that kind of is this a date? Is it not a date? Because
uncertainty, for sure.
We're 12, we're 11, we're 12. Like I don't know. Should I ask her? Is this a date? And so it's like I said, that's basically the whole plot of Doug, and Doug is very wholesome. So this is something that you could put in front of your preschoolers and not have to worry about.
It felt like a John Hughes film, like kind of drawn out. It's like if John Hughes made an animated series. But then Doug is not just making this stuff up, like putting these hurdles, and you have the antagonist of Roger, which I always liked the episodes where, of course, it always ended on Roger with egg on his face and his own friends laughing at him, like, enter the Nematodes. But it was like I liked when they humanized Roger a little bit, when Roger wasn't so much of an asshole. I enjoyed those episodes quite a bit. But yeah, it's just like, and then you have Skeeter where he's like, I don't know, man, just do whatever. Like he just didn't care. He just wanted to skateboard.
Chaotic neutral. Like
yeah, exactly.
And one of the biggest things is that a lot of times Doug would go back to be kind to Roger, and that was kind of like the big thing was like even Patti especially is kind of a really big kind of a big push for Doug to be like be not like it's good to do good things, like it's good to be nice, and so as a kid, like this is kind of targeted towards like pre-junior high kids, like junior high-ish. It's a little bit slow, and like I said, Jim Jenkins, who created this, kind of went on to do a lot of Nick Jr. programs like Little Bear and Little Bill.
He didn't do Caillou, did he?
I don't think so. I remember he at least did, and then like the Adventures of Richard Scarry, the Wonderful World of Richard Scarry, I think was what it was called. Like a lot of those shows, like when you watch them, you have kids and you've had, you know, when they were younger, like when you watch little kids shows, they always talk super slow. Like, I think I could do that, and like that Doug is so slow.
Yes.
You know, it's such a slow, like you can see how they're talking. And Patti Mayonnaise talks like she has mayonnaise in her mouth. She's just like, hey, Dad, do you want to go to the play beat ball with me? Like just super slow, super, you know, like very enunciated, very careful. I didn't mean to make that sound sexual.
Just because you didn't mean it, didn't mean it wasn't.
Yeah, maybe my Freudian slip is showing.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I've said off air, I don't trust anyone that has that much of a tan with that yellow of hair. I don't know. I think they look like cheese.
Plus, her last name is Mayonnaise. Like, you know, like your family's name is Mayonnaise. God, like, I use mayonnaise to describe people that I think are bland. Like, it's like, oh, they're the mayonnaise of TV. Like, I don't like too much mayonnaise. A little bit of mayonnaise, but not too much.
Sure, but you could definitely see other shows, and not just from Nickelodeon, that Doug influence. The biggest one that comes to mind, I'm a huge fan of Regular Show, and that whole, you know, will they, won't they, that kind of Ross and Rachel dichotomy. Kind of, I feel like it was influenced with Mordecai and Margaret's relationship, and there was probably countless more that we could talk about, even still in this lineup. But it just, that kind of Jim, and I forget her name from The Office. It had that will they, won't they, and unfortunately, I can't remember. Did they at the end of Doug?
I would have to say that it would be something that I didn't get to watch all of this. I mean, we had like a month to prepare, but we ended up covering 8 shows today, so I didn't have time to watch. I think I watched the whole first season, and so like towards the end of the first season, we were starting to get characters like let me see here. We have like you know, Principal Bone, Willie White, the mayor, Chalky, like the side characters.
Wasn't there a Principal Butt Savage too, or am I making that up?
I think that was a different show. But I just remember Vice Principal Bone was kind of funny in its own way. Like, this is going on your permanent record, and like that actually gave me so much anxiety. Like things I do and like how I fuck up in junior high is gonna mess with me for the rest of my life.
Right. Yeah. Nowadays it's like, oh shit, this is gonna wind up on Twitter or you know, Facebook or something like that. But yeah, back then it's like, oh my god, my permanent record.
Yeah. Yeah, and they made such a big deal about it in elementary school, but like in the senior year of high school, they're like, come on guys, like could you just calm down a little bit?
Yeah. Dr. Efron said that Principal Butt Savage was my actual principal. Yeah, maybe that's where I got it wrong.
Yeah, I did wear a Nick shirt. I got a Nick shirt off Amazon. So yeah,
whatever. Brag. I'm wearing Mr. Incredible tonight. So sorry I didn't stay on theme. It's still in the cartoons. But yeah, we have 7 more, and we've already spent 23 minutes on Doug. I could talk Doug for 23 more minutes, but alas, we have to move on.
I'm going to play you off into Rugrats here. So Rugrats is actually Nickelodeon's second longest running show. So Rugrats ran from 1990, which was one of the first Nicktoons. We're going in order if you're following.
Hey, hang on, it's a bit loud, so I don't think the audience can hear you while you're playing it.
Sorry about that.
There we go.
Okay. So Rugrats is the second longest running Nicktoon ever. It was one of the first, and we're going in order if you guys are paying attention. Rugrats, so it went from 1990 to 2006, which is a long time. And it went for 172 episodes and 9 seasons. It was created by Paul Germain, Gibor Chupsko, and Arlene Klasky. And if you recognize those names, it's from the production house Klasky Chupko, which did a lot of Nicktoons stuff. So we're going to be talking about them a lot. One thing I did want to touch on, they were awarded, they were nominated for 6 Primetime Emmys and won 20 other awards. So those are like Kids' Choice Awards and like Daytime TV Awards. But like you touched on this earlier with Skeeter, you know, it was Rugrats was unique in that it was it's probably the only instance of Jewish representation in animation. You know, they had Hanukkah and Passover specials, and they were represented by a Jewish father and a non-Jewish mother, just like Arlene Klasky and Gibor Chupsko. They were Jewish and non-Jewish family. And I mean, like, they had an episode where two old men recreated Hanukkah and Passover scenes at their synagogue. Like, that is something that, like, I have never heard of.
Completely unheard of.
And it's great. Like I mean, like I said, that's never happened before or since. So good on them.
Yeah, I mean, this is the show of my people. I mean, that's my background. But just to kind of sum up the uninitiated, if you've never seen Rugrats before, it's about this kind of play group of, you know, babies. The oldest one is Angelica. She's 3, which I like. As soon as we did this, I remember that commercial so much. It's like, they had this commercial where it was almost like the beginning of Suicide Squad, where they kind of do like a card of each one. It's like, Tommy, he's the smart one and wears glasses. He's 2. And it's like, and Angelica, she's the bitch. She's 3. But it's like, it kind of was true, right? Like, because Angelica, if you're going to have an antagonist, if anyone was the antagonist of Rugrats, it was probably her. But it almost had like a Toy Story vibe to it. And correct me if I'm wrong, where it's just like, there was always a MacGuffin, and then shenanigans ensued when parents and adults were away, and then they would solve said MacGuffin and be back in time for you know, the adults to just think they were babies. I think Phineas and Ferb is another example of this.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things is, you know, you can obviously say, like, okay, maybe it's a little bit convenient for the plot of every single episode that the parents get so easily distracted. But I mean, that basically has to happen for Rugrats to happen. You know, the kids, basically, they kind of overhear the adults talking about something, then take it wildly out of context, and then go on an adventure based off of what they heard out of context. So one of the more memorable episodes for me, because it was very similar to because I played one of the PlayStation games, The Search for Reptar.
Yes, my man.
It basically played through the first season of Rugrats. And so there's an episode where, you know, you're stuck in a toy shop, and they're like they're riding a train, like, you know, a train that could support a baby that's big enough, and like Chucky's running after Tommy, who's on the caboose of this train, and he like reaches out and grabs him and pulls him onto the train, like, you know, and activates a giant Reptar doll. And
yes,
there's a time machine toy for kids in that show. Like, who thought that was safe? But yeah, so it was Tommy, Chucky, Phil, and Lil, who were twins. And we also had Susie, who was an African American character, and we also had Kimmy, who was introduced later as an Asian American character. So again, more very inclusive, very open, especially for the early 90s. You know, that was just something that you didn't see.
And it was very, sorry to cut you off, but it was very Trojan horse, right? Because it's just like, it's all these things coming at you. A lot of heady themes, like you said, they were replaying complete, like, synagogue instances, like Passover and whatnot. But when you're doing it in the form of children, especially children in diapers, it's a lot more palatable for some. You know, I don't want to say that, you know, it's like, oh my God, there's a, you know, Jewish people and that girl's this color and that boy's this, but, you know, maybe it would have been a turnoff for some, but it was done in such a wholesome and welcoming and inviting way. It was just perfect.
Yeah, when you go to the VFW and you hear your grandpa talk about Jewish people in America, maybe you're not going to come away with a very tasteful opinion of those people. And this showed it in a way, or introduced it in a way that it wasn't beating you over the head with it. And it was kind of like, this is their story within, you know, this is them relating the Passover story to their lives and like what their beliefs are. And they also had Christmas episodes. So it wasn't like they were like, oh, you have to like Jewish stuff or this is bad, you know.
L'chaim, bitches. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was just very, and again, it was kind of like Doug, very soft, very easy. Klasky Chupko animation, I will say it now. I will defend it. Like I'll die on that hill. But it's like mustard. I can only have so much of it. But if I have mustard on everything, I will flip the table. It's very unique. I won't say it's bad. It's just unique.
It doesn't hold up as much as some things as far as rewatchability these days. I will agree with you there.
Later episodes are a little bit better, and when they moved from, but I mean, like, it's so detailed. It's like the hand drawings are so great. They look awesome, and I love it. But I couldn't, like, if there was a whole channel that was just Klapsy Chupko art, like, no, I just couldn't do it.
Yeah, for sure. I always liked the whole. I mean, they kind of checked all the boxes. If you're going to have, it was basically like every episode was a heist movie, and if you're gonna have a heist movie, you have all the characters that are good at what they're good at, but you also have Chucky, voiced by something Kavanaugh, Christine. I'm so much better at names usually.
Christine Cavanaugh. Yes.
Christine Cavanaugh. She's kind of like the voice of reason. She's always kind of the stick in the mud, but for certain reasons, because Tommy's just like the leader, right? Tommy's the bull in the china shop. He just wants to make shit happen, and he wants everyone to follow him and follow his lead. And, you know, Phil and Lil are there to kind of add the extra layer of MacGuffin, because they were always like, maybe if the heist was going or you know, the situation was going too well, then you could always count on Phil and Lil to kind of like stop and smack each other around and just add that extra level of tension. There was quite a bit of tension in this show.
Yeah, I've actually got a clip here of Phil and Lil. So this is Phil and Lil, and this is them wondering who, like Angelica obviously being the Roger Klotz of the Rugrats world.
Yeah.
They basically, she would basically kind of like stick things in their heads. So like the kids would overhear the parents say something, and then they'd go, I wonder what that means. And Angelica would come by and be like, you dumb babies, this is what it means. And you know, she'd tell them, and then Chucky would go, I don't know, that sounds a little fishy. But so this is basically after, and you know, they overhear somebody talking about, you know, which twin is your favorite. And then they go, I wonder which one's our favorite. And then Angelica comes by and says, of course, one of you is the favorite. You just have to figure it out. So this is Phil and Lil wondering together who the favorite is. Big thing is this shows how they dramatize things in their heads.
Sure.
And yeah, we'll just play it.
Angelica was right about the favorite? Nah, she couldn't be. If Daddy and Mommy had a favorite, they'd be much nicer to him. You're right. She'd be treated a lot better. And Mommy and Daddy treat us both the same. Right, exactly the same.
So the kids start playing with the ball. And so this is them imagining things. So this is Lil imagining that their dad is dumping all the milk into one bottle and giving her the empty bottle and giving Phil the full bottle.
Here you are, Philip.
And he visibly gets fat, like busts out of his PJs. That's all we need to play. But basically, that's the idea. Is like they come up with an adventure based on a misunderstanding, and then they eventually pull together and figure out that, oh, things aren't as bad as we thought they were. We just overreacted.
Sure. One of them had like a single parent household too. I don't remember if it was the twins' mom or it was Chucky's dad.
It was
maybe.
Yeah, Chucky's dad. So again, single families, which wasn't something that people talked about. But I mean, I was a family, like my parents divorced when I was 2, and like that was all I knew. So like when I was growing up watching this, it was like, oh, of course they would have like, you know, Tommy's parents, you know, are just together, and Phil and Lil's mom was a super feminist, and she had a husband.
That's it. Yeah.
That was kind of like a wimpy dude, like maybe not like, I wouldn't say wimpy. He just wasn't very what you would think of as like a TV dad.
He wasn't over masculinized.
Yeah, he just wasn't over masculinized. That's kind of that illustrates what I meant to say. And so, you know, it showed different types of family dynamics, because, you know, not everything is, you know, you have your mom and your dad and your 2.3 rambunctious little scamps, you know, and your off-white picket fence and your dog and your cat, and that's it. You know, because there's no ideal American, there's no ideal Canadian, there's no ideal German, whatever you say. But yeah, so it did a good job of just kind of showing people, and, you know, there's other types of families.
Pappy Popper in the chat was asking exactly where in the timeline the movie fell, and I believe it was towards the end of the series, right?
Actually, so we're about to go into the spin-off stuff, so like movies.
Perfect. Yeah.
So first off, you can stream this on Hulu. I also think on Amazon Prime. I'd have to double check that. But so there were two spin-offs. There was Rugrats All Grown Up, which was them as junior high students,
which I did not enjoy.
It wasn't great. It was fine. It lasted for a couple of years. And then there was another one called Rugrats Preschool Days, which was Angelica as a preschooler. And that lasted for a month.
So it was great.
So the Rugrats movie in 1998 actually kind of bisects the Rugrats timeline.
Okay.
So if you remember, there are some TV episodes with Dill, who is Dill Pickles, very appropriate, cute little baby name. And he was born in the movie. And so the whole movie is basically, Tommy struggling with the idea of having a younger sibling because he's never had to share his parents before. And that's the whole thing. So they try to get rid of him, and then he realizes, oh snap, maybe I should keep my brother around because I could have somebody to play with all the time. I'm a baby, goo goo gaga. Let's go.
And Dill's pretty badass. Dill winds up being kind of like the Jack of like Incredibles, right? He's if Tommy is the bull in the china shop, then that's what Dill is, but set on fire.
Yeah, and so it even gets really dark. Like there's even a point where Tommy almost kills Dill. Like it's very emotional. But the Rugrats movie did very well. It was followed up by Rugrats in Paris in 2000, which did fairly well, but not quite as well as the original.
I did not like that movie.
It focused mostly on Kimmy. And not to say that Kimmy's a bad character, but she definitely was added. So, it wasn't part of the dichotomy or the original cast. The other big thing is that, even with Susie, Susie was around very early as a tertiary character, kind of showed up every once in a while. But Kimmy kind of started showing up. I think Kimmy's mom married Chucky's dad, and so she was just kind of thrown in all the time. So it was followed up by Rugrats in Paris. They go on vacation to Paris, and they have the Reptar mobile for some reason. It did pretty good, but not quite as good as the Rugrats movie. It was then followed up by a crossover movie in 2003 called Rugrats Go Wild, which was a crossover with the Wild Thornberrys, also made by Class D Chupko.
And that was a question in the chat also, if the Rugrats ever kind of cameoed in or bled over into other ones. And yes, that is the movie that they did it.
So that's the movie that they did. That one did the worst of the three. However, all movies have grossed $299.6 million.
Jesus Christ!
Making it the 25th highest grossing animated film series of all time.
Good Lord.
Yeah. And then, that's considering we have The Land Before Time that has had 16 movies.
No, and let me just say, let's go into real land real quick. I'm knee deep in, or I'm not now. I'm completed my early Coen Brothers rewatch, and just go and look, go on Wikipedia or whatever, and look how much most of the Coen Brothers films have grossed. Nothing near that. Nothing even near that. So you think about Coen Brothers, and you think about the Rugrats movies doing those kind of numbers, that puts a lot of things into perspective.
So some more surprising Rugrats pieces. So there's a comic book series distributed by Creator Syndicate from 1998 to 2003. Boom Comics started a new Rugrats series in October of 2017. There's a currently running Rugrats comic.
Where are they age-wise?
I think they're babies. I didn't honestly look too much into it. But there also have been 19 video games. Yes. So spanning from Rugrats Scavenger Hunt for the Nintendo 64, Rugrats Search for Reptar, and Rugrats Studio Tour for PlayStation, Totally Angelica PlayStation and Game Boy Color, Rugrats Time Travelers and the Rugrats movie for Game Boy Color, Rugrats in Paris the movie for N64, PlayStation, and Game Boy Color. Basically, the list goes on. They basically went from the N64 all the way up to their cameos into PS2 games.
That's kind of where I played those games, was the N64 games. They were fantastic, actually. N64, and that's a whole other show kind of thing, is probably one of the best game systems, or at least had the best catalog. And the Rugrats games for N64 were pretty fantastic.
Which was surprising because N64 did not have a great third-party catalog. All the
Sure.
games were outstanding, but the third-party games outside of 007, you weren't like hoping for a whole lot.
Right. That's the Nintendo brand, basically.
Outside of Nintendo and Rare specifically, you weren't.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and move on because I know we have to keep going. The next one in our list is the third of the original Nicktoons, and it is one that I know a lot of you like. Oh, whoops. Here we go. Ren and Stimpy. Great intro music. It is so beautiful. All right, so
You know how many times I've tried to play that on guitar? And I'm decent, but that's hard.
no, it's great. It's great, like kind of bluesy, like jazz club sort of music. And
So good.
and Ren and Stimpy had such a great soundtrack, like all throughout the series. It was created by John Kricfalusi and Bob Camp. And a lot of this information I got from a podcast called What a Cartoon, which is a great cartoon podcast if you're into that. If you're into that sort of thing.
If you're watching this, you probably are.
Yeah, definitely. But there's also a book called Sick Little Monkeys, the Unauthorized Guide to Ren and Stimpy. And John Kricfalusi is kind of a polarizing character. So he was a notorious perfectionist, a workaholic, and he expected his animators to basically hold themselves to similar standards. So he was kind of notoriously cruel. Maybe not cruel, but just like very, very rough on his animators. And it's one of those things that, like, if you've heard something about John Kricfalusi, it's probably true.
Yeah.
And that's kind of bad. It was later found out that he initiated some relationships with female coworkers that were not of consent age. So there's kind of a lot of Me Too stuff that really, so like, we're not going to really focus on John Kricfalusi a whole lot, but it is important to know that he did help create the show. And honestly, the first 6 episodes came out over 6 months because he was such a notorious perfectionist and had to personally oversee everything that happened. What do you have anything else you want to run for Ren and Stimpy real quick?
Well, I mean, it was a revolutionary show. And like the chat said, I think that it started off as shorts on MTV. And if anyone doesn't know that Nickelodeon and MTV are both owned by Viacom, so they are the same company. So there was quite a bit of bleed over. So at the same time that we were getting all these shows, especially when Ren and Stimpy came out, you were getting the Max liquid television, so to speak. Story of the Brothers Grunt, the Max, Eon Flux, Beavis and Butthead, all that stuff kind of came out around the same time. And it kind of, and if I recall correctly, maybe it didn't start out like as far as airing episodes on Nickelodeon, but I remember Firehouse Dogs did debut on MTV.
Yeah, and I mean, in the case of Ren and Stimpy, they initially ordered 6 episodes, and I should have written down her name, but they're one of the executives at Nick, who kind of spearheaded the foundations of Nicktoons as we know them, basically put her job on the line to get this show on the air. And it's like, it's really easy to see why it was such a hard ask. The first episode, the whole plot is them eating dirty cat litter.
So it wasn't. So see, I thought it was either Firehouse Dogs or Space Madness as episode 1. So it was actually.
It's Firehouse Dogs.
It was fire. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There was just so many iconic moments from episode 1. You got Mr. Horse, with no, sir, I didn't like it. It was just, and then it went all the way to to Space Madness, and that's, in my opinion, my humble, pretentious opinion, I think that Space Madness is the most iconic Ren and Stimpy episode of all time.
Yeah, and I had a hard time finding clips for it because I dragged all my clips off of YouTube, so I had a hard time finding Ren and Stimpy clips where people weren't talking over it, or it wasn't somebody just recording their TV.
Sure.
In the chat, Powdered Toast Man was pretty great as well.
Oh God, so good. I think that they were kind of the pioneers of the close up kind of gross out shot, which in later episodes or in a later episode of YouTOONS, we'll talk about SpongeBob SquarePants, which they kind of took that as well and used it, where it's that very kind of very close shot of someone's face, very detailed and very disgusting, like boogers hanging out and all that stuff. I mean, what could be? Let's talk a little bit about the cast of Ren and Stimpy, because if anyone didn't know, Billy West, the voice of Doug, is Stimpy.
Yeah, he actually was the voice of Ren after episode 8, I believe.
Okay, yeah.
John Kricfalusi was asked to leave. He was because of partially because of how controversial the subject matter was, and so it ended up being one of those things where a lot of the earlier episodes kind of had like psychological issues at hand. So it's like Space Madness is a great example of that, where like they're just it's exposing kids to the idea of total isolation, no sound, nothing. And it's like, how do you handle that? And it shows them like tapping on the like, and then Ren going crazy because Ren is basically an angry dad.
Oh, my beloved ice cream bar.
My beloved ice cream bar. Yeah, and then so I mean, it's one of those things that after John Kricfalusi left, there were a lot more kind of gross stuff. Again, like Stimpy's Invention is another great one where like he had stay put socks, which were just socks that were full of glue. That later led to the Happy Happy Joy Joy. And like one of my favorite episodes was actually I don't remember the name of it, but it was an episode about evolution. And
yes,
so Galapagos Islands, and there were like the Ren geckos, and like they had their head would pop open and a little radar dish would pop out, and it would find the flies, and then his tongue would come out shaped like a hand and slap the fly around, and then grab it, and like the fly would scream like a human. There was lots of screaming on Ren and Stimpy too.
Yes, but in an awesome way, because I don't know. I tend not to like that kind of like Adam Sandler style humor where it's just like people like looking at each other, looking at the camera and screaming. But it was so dead on and like you said, talk about heady themes. We said heady themes in Rugrats. I mean, this was thinking about mental illness and isolation and madness and all these things and just the most quotable things. But like you said, with you said Happy Happy Joy Joy, this show spawned some of the most iconic songs and like jingles of that era, and someone in the chat mentioned Log, it rolls downstairs alone in pairs. I wanted to buy a log.
Yeah. And they also had those. So there was lots of little commercials that they did, because not all the shows were the same length. So one thing that you'll notice about all these shows is they were basically 2-parter episodes. So they'd be like one that was there'd be 2 11-minute shows. And the reason that they did that was so that they could basically like rearrange them. And actually I had a few of these. There were cassette tapes, or not cassette, VHS cassettes that had like 2 episodes, but they weren't the episodes that aired together. And so basically they could cut them up in any which way they wanted and put them on. But especially in Ren and Stimpy, they had those commercials like Log, the Muddy Mud Skipper cereal bowl caddy.
Oh God, so good.
They had a girl's log, which was basically you would staple clothes to the log. So, and they were just mocking like 50s ads for toys. I didn't say it all up front, but the series ran from 1991 to 1996, had 5 seasons and 52 episodes. It is streamable nowhere. You cannot find this anywhere. You have to buy DVDs or cassettes or VHSs.
Do you think that's because of the kind of dark cloud that surrounds the showrunner?
It possibly is. I mean, he honestly wasn't that big of a part of the show after season 2. So honestly, there's a whole lot more that was done by Game Studios, which is Nick's internal, rather than his Jon K's studios. So it's one of those things that it's very controversial just because of all the the Me Too stuff that's happening, which is good. And we don't need, we want to correct those behaviors. But this, I just think it's very it's for the same reason that like Rocko's Modern Life isn't streamable in most places. Like it has a lot of adult themes in it, and people kind of know that now. And Ren and Stimpy was actually a catalyst for a lot of shows like you said, like SpongeBob, where they do those gross close-ups, and people go, well, Ren and Stimpy did it. Like, why can't we do it? Like, if they were able to get it past the censors, why can't we?
And I think that's a great point, because I think that Ren and Stimpy, its blood relative is, and that's what's funny about it, because you have Ren and Stimpy, which has this kind of reputation of being this very adult kind of off-limit show, especially by, and not even saying that the showrunner's a creep, because he was, but by today's standards, you couldn't see a Ren and Stimpy show. But the closest thing that you can in this day and age is SpongeBob SquarePants, which I can't wait to talk about, because there is so much to talk about. Not in this show. Come back for volume 2. But yes, I mean, just for some fan service from the chat. Are you happy yet? I'll teach you to be happy. I'll teach your grandmother to suck eggs.
So that whole song is Burl Ives quotes taken out of context. He said so that he was in westerns, and so like the I told you I'd shoot, but I didn't warn you. I warned you. Why didn't you do it? Like, that was from him acting in a western. Like,
sure,
they're just all taken out of context. So actually, I have a clip from that show. Like I said, Ren and Stimpy were a lot harder to find, but this is from Stimpy's invention.
So happy ironing for Stimpy.
And the top of his head is dancing on his tongue. He irons the underwear so flat that he sticks it on the front of his body, and he gleams. Yeah,
that was the episode where he's like, "I'll give you $5," right?
No, so that was Stimpy's invention when
okay,
he makes the happy helmet, and he has a very Dexter's Lab scene where like he's like using a beaver and a duck to like manufacture a scientific device. Yeah.
Oh my god.
But yeah, Ren and Stimpy's so good. I think we should totally move on though.
Yeah.
To my favorite. This show is my favorite. Because it is everything I want it to be as an adult.
So if it's the one that you're thinking of, I think this is the one that won the best on chat or on Twitter as well. Every week, or every show rather, of these live movie review or TV show review shows, I always put out a tweet poll asking you all, the audience, what is your favorite subject matter? And I think this is the winner, if I'm not mistaken, Kody.
Again, a theme song from the B-52s. So Rocko's Modern Life is so amazing. This is the 4th Nicktoon added.
Rocko's Modern Life. Rocko's Modern Life.
If you can't do karaoke to a B-52 song, I don't know what's wrong with you.
You don't have a pulse. I can't help myself.
All right, so this was created by Joe Murray, who actually got his start working for Viacom for MTV, and he did a lot of interstitials for MTV. So just like little 15-second MTV commercials that you would only watch on MTV, basically. So the series ran from 1993 to 1996. It had 4 seasons and 52 episodes, and actually one lost episode that I will talk about towards the end. So this had a few notable people. Carlos I'm gonna mess this up. Aaahh as Rocco.
It's a hard one.
Rocco, Spunky, Leon Chameleon, Tom Kenny as Heifer Wolf.
Okay, hold on. Tom Kenny is probably second in line to Mr. Luke Skywalker himself as far as voice. I do a little. I moonlight as a voice actor. Tom Kenny is like next to Mark Hamill for me. So please continue.
We will definitely come back to talk about Tom Kenny, I'm sure. So he was Heifer Wolf. The one I misspelled that, but it's the other
Heifer Wolf, who is a cow
adopted by wolves.
Right.
Yes. He also did the voice of Really, Really Big Man, who had the nipples of truth. He would save people by ripping his shirt and having his nipples shoot out of his chest and into the person he was saving's eyes, so they could see what the future would be like if they live.
Kody, how the fuck did this show get made?
Again, it's one of those things where like they could go, well, Ren and Stimpy did it, and you know, they not only that, I mean, like it was one of those things that it was so early on in animation that people were kind of like, yeah, I mean, adults watch this, you know, like some adults, you know, and you know, stoner teenagers, they watch this on MTV, and that's fine too. Ren and Stimpy, or sorry, Rocko's Modern Life had its own adult stuff that we will definitely cover. Charlie Adler played Ed and Bev Bighead. George Wolf, Grandpa Wolf, and the Fatheads in the cartoon that Ed and Bev's Bighead son did about them. So he was a kid that moved away from his parents and made a cartoon about them called the Fatheads. Mr. Lawrence he was only one voice. Well, he did like little individual voices, but he is best known as kind of one of my favorite characters. And let me see here. I've got something here for you all so you can hear who it is.
You turn the page, you wash your hands. You turn the page, you wash your hands.
Sheldon!
You turn the page, and then you wash your hands.
He was Filbert Turtle.
Oh, not Sheldon. Yeah, Filbert. Hold on. Before you go on, I promised a special fun haiku about something, and that is that exact line. I still do that to this day. Every night I try to read to my 5 and 6 year old, and I will whisper in their ear, much to their dismay, you turn the page, you wash your hands. You turn the page, you wash your hands. And they go, what is that? Like it sparks so much anger, and just like my poor little 6-year-old wants to tear her face off because daddy won't stop saying wash your hands. Because fine, you know, it's like, okay, good job, honey. You read that page. Turn the page. And then she's like, okay. This poor little 6-year-old, right? And then she gets back into it. And you wash your hands. Oh, got me again.
My 3-year-old is still working on potty training. You know, it's mostly just like wiping. So so my thing is wipe your butt, wash your hands, wipe.
That works too. I just like how how much of a germaphobe he is, to know, like, because I think he either frequents or works at a comic store. I think he works at a comic store.
Well, so Rocco works at the comic book.
That's right. So he's just like a super fan, and he just comes in and he knows that people are touching this, and the fact that there is like finger skin cells on these pages just disgusts him, and I just love it.
So actually, I cut the clip a little bit short, but right before he says "turn the page, wash your hands" for the first time ever, he says, "You know, sometimes when you get a new comic book, the ink rubs off on your hands. Turn the page." Turn the page, wash your hands. Turn the page, wash your hands. He's a germaphobe. He's also like, his full name is let me see here, Filbert Shellbach. He's just like a germaphobe, and he's also just like a neurotic mess. He's always like super worried about things until he gets pushed over the edge, and then he's like an angry soul. Like he yells all the time, like, "Why don't you do it yourself then?" You know?
Yeah.
And so then we also had let's see, Linda Walham, who did Dr. Paula Hutchinson, who was Filbert's girlfriend, I guess. She was a doctor that had a hook for her hand and a vet.
Right? That's all you need.
This show had a lot of adult themes. Like the main restaurant that they all went to was the Choky Chicken, which was changed in season 4 to the Chubby Chicken.
Right.
Because it took them until season 4 to realize that was a masturbation joke. And I mean, like, there's an episode where Rocco takes a job as for a call center in quotes. But then when they cut to Rocco, he's saying, "Oh baby, oh baby, oh baby." So it's a sex line. One of the best parts was that it was Bev Bighead that was calling him.
Right, right.
The poster on the wall said, "Be hot, be naughty, be courteous." I want that poster. I might switch out my bacon and eggs poster for that every once in a while.
Sure.
I just want it because it's you got to be hot, you got to be naughty, but you got to be courteous. Like,
and why they cast this, very awkward marsupial for that,
Yeah, and he's just saying, "Oh baby, oh baby, oh baby." Like he's like not into it at all. He's just here to do a job. There's an episode where they make a home video that's embarrassing for Rocco and accidentally publish it to the whole town. So they go around town buying up all the copies, and Heifer actually buys a copy of another video, which is Ed and Bev Bighead sex tape.
I remember that.
Yeah, and it's just like there's an episode where Rocco grabs the balls of a bull, like while grabbing berries out of a bush. Like how did this stuff happen?
Right. Well, it was displayed, right? It wasn't like it was off camera. You saw what were the berries hanging out of the bush, and you saw him grab it, right? And then you saw the bull's head pop out.
And he ran away holding his dick. Like
yeah. I mean, there were bull testicles and bull dick on a child's television show.
Covered up by his hands. Like you couldn't see the Johnson itself, but it was definitely there. I mean, there's just so much stuff that it's like, how did this get made? And they're just like, well, look, like Ren and Stimpy is the hottest thing you guys own. How could we not do something similar?
But it wasn't just gross out comedy, though. It was also kind of heartfelt too, because behind the kind of mascara like dick and fart jokes, like Heifer at one point, or I remember one of my favorite episodes, Rocco gets a credit card and he goes to get the best like suckometer, which was like a vacuum cleaner that he could buy, and winds up like buying the whole store or something. Goes into like what's that?
I hate to correct you, push up my glasses and correct you. Those are two separate episodes where he gets the suckomatic, where he gets hypnotized by the TV.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
And the third episode is where he buys a TV and they get sucked into it.
Yes.
But you're right. They basically buy the whole store.
You're right. The credit card one is the one that I was talking about. The one that I wanted to talk about, where he's hitting it so hard it's melting, and then Heifer has to sell his second stomach just to pay off Rocco's debt. And then the ending scene of that particular episode is a Scottish denizen using Heifer's haggis as a bagpipe, and it just like spurting all this like disgusting food.
I had to use it because I haven't used it in a while.
Right on time.
But yeah, so it's wildly inappropriate in some areas.
But it had some heart, right?
No, it was a great show. And again, it's an adult who is just figuring out his life. Like he's like in his early 20s. He works for a comic book store. He's a nerd. Like, and he has nerd friends, like a cow that's raised by wolves, who also his adopted brother, the wolf son, was a crossdresser, and like nobody cared. Like it was just a thing that happened, and he would just go out in cheerleader outfits. and the only person that cared was the dad, and even he got over it, by the end of the series.
Yeah, and the Mr. Wilson character, Dennis the Menace reference, the big heads were the ones next door, but they were the biggest fucking freaks of the whole show.
Yeah, and so he worked for a mega corporation called Blamo, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And the town was O-Town. So it was just they just showed like a middle-aged couple next door. There's an episode where he thinks that Bev murders her husband. It's just there's a whole episode about a fly that comes to live in Rocco's kitchen, and he brings a whole bunch of bug friends from, rescues them from the big heads so that they don't get eaten. Like, and Rocco has a sense of justice, but he's also like, this is my house, but he's also a soft-spoken marsupial. So, there's lots of weird things. So you can stream this on VRV, Nick Splat. And the only other, so there's 2 ways to buy it that I found. You can buy them for $10 a season on iTunes, or you can buy the DVDs from Amazon for $25 for all 4 seasons.
Nice.
So I recommend just getting them on DVD. They're not gonna be degraded too badly. And I've only got one other thing to say about Rocco, unless you have anything else.
Well, I was going to say, or you could contact my sister in the chat, The Walking Dead, because apparently she has all of the seasons on VHS.
I also have files maybe acquired through unscrupulous means. So nothing illegal, but just unscrupulous.
Right.
And so the biggest thing that happened recently about Rocco. So number one, it's being redone here soon. Like it's coming out, and they're going to pick up where the last episode left off, which is super cool. And the biggest thing, so there was talk for a long time, and again, the show ran until 1996. There was a lot of talk about a lost episode of Ren and Stimpy, or Rocko's Modern Life. Too many R shows. And so like it was kind of creepypasted, where people like told it from generation to generation before the internet, and even in early internet chat rooms where people were talking about it. And eventually it came to light that somebody found the lost episode and they were going to play it. So it came up on April 1st, 2013. On Teen Nick, they played the lost episode of Rocko's Modern Life. And it was 23 minutes of a jar of mayonnaise.
Perfect.
This actually comes back from an episode called Wacky Deli, where they help Ed and Bev Bighead's son. He's trying to get out of his contract with the cartoon company that he works for. And so they make a show called Wacky Deli, where it's just like meats that are like, the show is about deli meats that like hit each other and talk to each other and stuff. And so
oddly sexual as well.
Yeah, meats banging against each other. It's really nothing unusual there. But the biggest thing was that so it turns out kids love Wacky Deli. And it's just like, it's like Heifer and Filbert doing all the voices. So it's like super like, oh, I'm a salami. And it's really, really, really bad.
Yeah, and I'm a salami too. Yeah.
I'm a portobello cheese. And like, and so he decides to do something this is going to get me kicked off the show. And he shows 10 minutes of a jar of mayonnaise. And
it's borderline experimental.
Yeah, but what's funny is all the kids in the show that are watching that TV show, the Wacky Deli show, love it. They think it's the highest rated show on the network, and because they just wanted to watch the jar of mayonnaise. So that's why in April 1st, 2013, the lost episode of Rocko's Modern Life was a jar of mayonnaise.
That's just incredible. But there's also another bit of news as well for Rocko's Modern Life, right?
Not that I know of it. Unless
I thought you said they were reviving the show completely.
Well, so it's coming back as a movie.
Oh, okay. Which I'm not 100% on board for, because for every reason I stated, 15 minutes ago, you can't make Rocko's Modern Life today and have it be Rocko's Modern Life unless you do it on another platform, unless it's not just like a Nickelodeon thing. Because, let's be honest here. If Nickelodeon today said the Rocko's Modern Life movie's coming back, maybe the parents of whatever children are running around would be excited about that. But I don't think it's going to hold the same clout. So maybe they won't. Are they releasing it on Nick?
I honestly don't know a whole lot about all of the details, but it's coming back in some form. From what I've heard, it's going to be like where Phil and Heifer are like super into iPhones, and but Rocko is like stuck in the past. Like he doesn't get all this new technology. So it's it's one of those things that it could be really good or it could be really bad. The one really good thing that came from Rocko's Modern Life is a lot of the people that worked on Rocko's Modern Life moved on to eventually make SpongeBob.
Right.
And
And Ren and Stimpy, right?
No, so Ren and Stimpy kind of ran concurrently. So Rocko's Modern Life.
No, I meant a lot of the storyboard artists and everything left to go to left Ren and Stimpy to go work on SpongeBob as well.
Yes, yeah, there was definitely some overlap, but I forgot I did not get his name and I should have. Sorry, Joe Murray. Yeah, Joe Murray is making the new Rocko's Modern Life. I did not get the name of the creative director of Rocko's Modern Life at the end, but he's the guy who who started SpongeBob, Steven Hillenburg, I think.
Yes.
So I'm sure there was lots of Ren and Stimpy influences as well, because you see it all over the place there.
Yeah, absolutely. What do we got next on the docket, sir?
It's a scary one. So this is a Klasky Csupo cartoon called Aaahh! Real Monsters.
Ah!
Yeah. So this is kind of just a more instrumental intro, so we can kind of talk over it a little bit. It debuted in 1994. It focused on 3 young monsters, Ickis, Oblina, and Crumb, who attended a school for monsters under a city dump to learn to frighten humans. It ran from 1994 to 1997, had 52 episodes, 4 seasons, created by Gabor Csupo and Peter Gaffney. It also has just a huge number of great voiceover actors. So let me go over these real quick. Charlie Adler played Ickis. Christine Cavanaugh, again, from earlier, played Oblina.
Chucky.
Chucky. And David Eccles played Crumb. So basically, these kids were in school. It's very much like Monsters University, where like they're in school to learn how to scare people. The other main protagonist was the Grumble, who was like the teacher, who was Greg Berger, who did countless video games, TV shows. He was in Star Wars, Powerpuff Girls, Recess, Clifford the Big Red Dog, Ty the Tasmanian Tiger, Final Fantasy games, Out Your Ass. He's done so many things. I also think he was the mayor in Nightmare Before Christmas.
And also Otho from Beetlejuice.
Yeah. He's just so synonymous in the industry. He's like Billy West, just kind of a little bit older.
Unfortunately, do you know the story of his passing?
No, I didn't know he was gone.
He fell. He had a wheelchair towards the end of his life. He lived in an apartment complex, and he rolled backwards down a flight of apartment complex stairs. And that is how he passed.
That is terrible.
That's like the worst. I feel really bad. Aaahh! Real Monsters is with the lineup that we have tonight, that we're discussing tonight, I believe is the most underrated, underappreciated, and underwatched of the lineup that we have discussed and will discuss also. I think that it is fantastic on every level. You made a very apt comparison during our kind of prep for this, saying that they basically, it is Monsters Inc. It is very much Monsters Inc., but it does have that kind of naughtiness that Rocko's Modern Life and Ren and Stimpy has as well. Ickis is fantastic. The role or the character of Ickis it's funny because he gets a lot of shit because he looks kind of like a red bunny rabbit, and he is very cute, where this is a world where disgusting and terror is key, and Ickis is just adorable. Oblina is just crazy. She looks like an upside down candy cane with giant lips. She is kind of the smart one, the straight man, so to speak. She's the Chucky. She kind of is the voice of reason, and no one listens to her until they kind of have to. And then you have Crumb, who is just filthy. He is just, think of disgusting, overweight, man in a wife beater, and that's what you get from Crumb, which he is very much touted. Oblina and Crumb, from what I remember, because their job in school is, they get graded on scaring, kind of like Monsters Inc. and Monsters University. And Crumb just does it very much by his odor, his stench. Oblina can kind of contort herself and become something that she's not. And Ickis is just adorable. I like that the currency is fingernails and toenails, but toenails, if I remember correctly, toenails actually are worth something where fingernails are not, where they pick up a bag in one episode and they're just like, yes, I hit the jackpot. And one of the other ones just like, no, that's just fingernails. Who cares?
Yeah. So actually Ickis can grow really big. So when
that's right. Yeah.
He gets really big. So again, this has a lot of those like, subtle adult themes. One of my favorite episodes is where they're all morphed together into one monster. And they are sent to a party to scare people, and to quote, scare the pants off people. And so they scare everybody in this dance hall, and everybody's pants fall down except for one woman who her panties drop. It's super quick, and you have to be like watching it to like, like she's wearing a skirt, and so they can't have her skirt drop. So her panties drop. It's like, maybe there's something to this Ickis, Oblina, Crumb
amalgamation. Sure.
I was gonna say Cronenberg, sort of amalgamation. But so, and again, I addressed Chapsy Klupso's art style as being kind of like more realistic and kind of ugly. And I think that this is the best showcase for that type of art.
I was just going to say, if that kind of style worked, it was with these kind of mythical, like fairy tale type creatures, where in Rugrats, like you said, you get kind of a fatigue from watching that, with the weird, shifty, kind of frantic animation. But this, like you said, lent perfectly to this style of animation.
Yeah, and everything looks super dirty. Everything looks super ugly, and it's on purpose because they're monsters.
They lived in a junkyard, right?
They ate bugs and like bathed in sewage. So like it's supposed to be ugly and dirty. I do have one clip here of an episode where they find a talisman, and they give it to Oblina as a good luck charm. Let's see here. Where did I find that? I gotta find it in my list of I got to find a better organizational tool here.
Do you know offhand if this is streamable anywhere? Because like I said before, while I was going off on my giant tirade, Aaahh! Real Monsters is just something that you should watch, because yes, there's the iconic Nicktoons like Rocko's Modern Life, Ren and Stimpy, Doug, all those that we've already covered. And, there's a million reasons why you should go watch the Rugrats, because they're our childhood. But this is one that you might have skipped over, and it was around the same time. You just should go back. And this one tends to be one of the most rewatchable ones. So sorry, I was trying to give you some time to find it.
Buy me some time. And this is available on Nicksplat or Verve, because Verve is Nicksplat is part of Verve. So I've been watching it. I think it's really great. So this is the clip. They're all in the junkyard, and they're giving Oblina this lucky charm.
What is it?
It's the fish head on a chain. You wear it and you rub it. Yeah, wear it and rub it.
And they
it's
call
the
Oblina
luckiest thing in the world. And that's it. You're one stop for all your good luck needs.
It really works.
Like a charm.
You don't have to sing or dance or anything?
Nope, just wear it, rub it, and it works.
Wow. Skanky.
Only the best. Let's go, Scarry.
Perhaps we should stay here a little longer and wait for the good luck to sink in. Oh!
Don't worry, it works.
So then they go up to the surface to scare more people. I don't want to bore people by just like having to listen to it, but I do want to kind of like bring people in. Like look, this is stuff that's worth watching. Aaahh! Real Monsters is great. It's beautiful. It's dirty.
It's only 50 something episodes, and they're 11 minutes a piece, right? What else are you gonna do with your time?
So they're 11 minutes, but they're two
right
per episode. So it's basically 104 episodes.
Oh man, but you get to watch a disgusting fat guy with large armpit hair with purple lips tell another monster that she's skanky. I mean, that if that's not gold, what is?
And what's funny is like the Grumble was like a horse kind of that wore high heels and like kind of was like a masculine feminine amalgamation and had a beak of like like a point out of his nose, but like didn't talk out of it. It was just like it was so weird. So there was a video game based on the TV series that was released for the Super NES and the Sega Mega Drive by Real Time Associates and published in Viacom New Media in 1995. Which is probably one of the latest Super NES and Mega Drive games. Ickis also appeared in Nicktoons Racing for the PlayStation, PC, and Game Boy Advance, but was missing from the Game Boy Color version. They were also in Microsoft's Nickelodeon 3D Movie Maker. So good stuff.
Excellent. Go watch Real Monsters. Like it's a gem. It is absolutely. It's just adorable. Mr. Kody, what do we got next?
Oh, not that.
Was that the dark web tab, Kody?
Whoops.
Here we go. Hey, Arnold!
So if it's not obvious by now, it's Hey Arnold. Hey Arnold.
So jazzy. I feel like I'm in a Mimi's cafe.
Arnold! Arnold!
Like Huey Lewis in the Times.
Yeah. All right.
Perfect.
Created by Craig Bartlett, ran for 5 seasons and 100 episodes. Has actually some really great cast members. It has Francine Marie Smith as Helga Pataki, Jamal Walker Smith as Gerald, Justin Shekinoff as Harold, Craig Bartlett as Brainy, Dan Castellaneta as Arnold's grandpa from The Simpsons, Futurama, Disenchantment, Tress MacNeille again from The Simpsons, Futurama. Just such great people in this, and it was kind of like a New York-ish town, and it was kind of like a fourth grader in a nameless city that resembles Brooklyn. And he lived in a boarding house with his grandparents, who also had a very inclusive, multiracial cast. Like I said, Gerald was his best friend. There was a Vietnamese immigrant in the boarding house. There was I guess maybe like Italian and Irish immigrants as well in that boarding house. So it was very inclusive to seeing different people, and it was very indicative of like what it is to have like a whole bunch of people of different backgrounds and trying to make those things work in a cool way.
Well, this was Rugrats grown up, done the right way, right? Like this was a melting pot, sure, but it was also, this one played on the heartstrings as much as Doug did, because as much as Doug captured and encapsulated perfectly a time and era in everyone's life that people can relate with, this also did the same thing, but this was kind of a little bit more. This was like Rugrats, which no one could really relate to, because you don't remember shit in your pants unless you're at a bachelor party. But then you could of course relate to the Doug era. But I think that Hey Arnold kind of encapsulated that time between that time and that time, between those two. And it was just those, yes, it was very Brooklyn, it was very New York, Mr. Football Head himself, but it was also very it was just going out and playing stickball. This was kind of like The Sandlot, but in a drawn out kind of series. I liked Hey Arnold a lot. It wasn't one of my favorites. Definitely wasn't. It was a weaker one for me as far as the other ones that we talked about. But it did have a special place, because it did touch on a lot of those early themes, like where Doug, in that time frame, in that era, your life changes and girls become important. This was kind of, Hey Arnold was the age where that seed's kind of planted, and it's kind of fun to see the interactions between those people.
Yeah, and I mean, this one was a little bit bigger for me because, again, my parents being, my mom and my stepdad being kind of more on the religious side. This was more of a very vanilla show. So this was what I was allowed to definitely watch Hey Arnold. So I remember a lot of Hey Arnold, like them cleaning up the lot so that they can have a baseball field, and then all the adults kind of coming and ruining that. And the thing was like, and I'm in college, so getting my associate's degree. So this is something I learned in intro psychology, where it's one of those things where, like, when you're a teenager, you're starting to understand the idea of justice and fair, like the difference between justice and fairness, and like what actually happens versus what is just or fair. And so it's kind of like, like when they clean up a lot to have a baseball field, and then all the adults just move in and they're like, well, tough titties, this is our place now. It's they're like, hey, that's not fair. And the adults are like, well, we're adults, so
deal with it. You're kids. Yeah. It was the first spark of kind of like a rebellious age.
Yeah. And but rebellion, and again, Arnold had, Gerald, who was there basically always supportive of Arnold. And then he had like Helga, who was very antagonistic. He had like Stinky and Harold and Brainy, and other characters that would kind of pop their 2 cents in. But Arnold always had a way of going like, no, that's not the right thing to do. We should do this. And then everyone would kind of go, well, fuck yeah. I mean, like, that's
yeah. It was interesting because it's almost like Inside Out, where different stages of your life, you have different emotions kind of taking over. And it's just like when you're a baby, maybe joy is the one that, that movie very aptly betrayed that joy is the one that's what you want at the helm, right? You want a happy baby, you want this, that, the other thing. And Chucky is more of that sadness role. And once you get a little older and you let kind of sadness, sadness isn't just sadness, just like sitting in the corner and crying, but also kind of the voice of reason. That's kind of what Hey Arnold, or the character Arnold, is letting kind of that more mature emotion in the early stages kind of taking over.
Yeah, and again, like, he's very reasonable. I mean, he's still a kid a little bit, so he gets swept up in things like having the perfect Saturday, riding down the biggest hill, watching, paying for one movie but seeing 3, eating sugar cereal. Like, he also had a kick-ass bedroom with a CD player,
right?
So I mean, like he just had a cool, like, skylit room, and he helped out the residents with their problems. There's even a whole episode about Mr. Wynn, about him having to leave Vietnam and like leaving his kid and or sending his kid to America without him. And there's a whole Christmas special about Arnold trying to get Mr. Wynn's daughter back to him as a Christmas present. And so it can be kind of silly, and they have an episode about, oh, things didn't go quite right, but grandma got her piano on the roof because grandma's insane. And but then there's like the Christmas episode, like I said, where it's like, we need to reunite Mr. Wynn with his daughter, or one of the guys in the boarding room, his wife wants him out, and we need to get them back together. And so like it interwove, like, kid problems, problems that you would solve out on the playground, with like adult themes of like, what, like, you're not a kid, you've got these kid things that are kind of problems, but here are like real adult problems of like, I can't find, I'm having trouble paying my rent, like these are things that actual adults have problems with. And so it kind of melded, like, this is where they intersect, and we need to become adults. And so it spawned on 2 movies. The 2002 Hey Arnold the Movie, which was really great. I went and saw it. I thought it did really well. And then in 2017, there was a straight-to-TV movie, Hey Arnold the Jungle Movie. I don't know anything about it, but I do have a clip, if it will play, because that was the clip that I tried to play earlier that wouldn't go. But let's see if we can get it to go.
I couldn't eat. Same glass glasses at the scene of a crime.
But why, girly?
Because 3 months, 2 weeks, and 4 days ago, Eugene borrowed my favorite pencil, the pencil I got last summer at Winkyland. And then when he finally returned it, it had chew marks all over it, and he sharpened it down to the metal parts. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. All I could think about was Eugene writing with my pencil. Eugene chewing on my eraser. And Eugene sharpening. And then when he finally gives it back to me, he says, "Oh, here, Curly."
So good.
So big.
Yeah, it's basically like, you know, like that's a kid problem. Like when you're an adult, like, and somebody gives you a bag of pencil and it's got some chew marks, you just throw it out. You throw it away because it's like, this is garbage. Like, but when you're a kid, you're like, this is my pencil.
and then you take the same pencil when you're at Safekey, you know, later on in the day and try to destroy it and try to destroy other people's pencils. But I think this was the first time that Nickelodeon, this was kind of the major change, right? This was them morphing from, let's just throw what we can out there because it's crazy and entertaining and kind of pandering to the stoner generation, and this is kind of more for geared towards kids. This is kind of similar to like Recess and all those kind of, where it's like hyper realistic, it's ultra reality, but it's still based in reality.
Yeah, so we're gonna go into actually one of my kids' favorite. My 2-year-old daughter loves this. She always, whenever I put it on, she goes, "Beavers, Beavers." So this is very, the Beavers are like fighting each other during this whole intro. So Angry Beavers was created by Mitch Schauer and Keith Kazarak. Ran for 4 seasons, 63 episodes, and basically has some pretty good cast, but it was, like you said, it's kind of the new guard of Nicktoons. And I actually have one more clip real quick that kind of explains the whole plot of Angry Beavers, because Angry Beavers is a fun show, and it's basically just 2 brothers that are living together and kind of trying to figure out how things are going. But this is the intro that plays at the beginning of the first episode.
Welcome to Wildlife Shenanigans! Heidi-ho, nature fans, this is Bill Licking. Join me for this week's episode, Beavers on the Go. A beaver den, cozily nestled among the birch and pines of a wilderness, located miles from civilization's man-made domain. Let's go inside. Here are the engaging Mr. and Mrs. Beaver welcoming us into their charming home. This is Norbert, their first litter's oldest by 4. Since the beaver litter includes only 2 siblings, this shy fellow must be Daggett. One big happy family, huh, folks? What's this? Mrs. Beaver? Can it be? Yes, yes it is! A second litter! No, boys? That's right! When the second litter of beavers is born, the first litter is primed and ready to strike out on their own. So as Mr. and Mrs. Beaver bid...
But basically, they're kicked out and they're forced to go out on their own. I mean, I really loved Angry Beavers. I think it's really great. Do you have anything to say about Angry Beavers?
Well, and first off, I just want to say that we're running a little bit up against it, so this will be the last one before we sign off, and we'll kind of save everything for Volume 2 and Nicktoons. Although that's not going to be the one that follows up YouTOONS, because we want to space it out and kind of, you know, give you that hook to come back. But Angry Beavers is one, and I'll be completely honest with you. Like I said before, I am so much into the voice acting. Although, you know, and having just such dynamic voice actors in some of the other ones, like Billy West, like Tom Kenny, and later on some of the other ones. Although Angry Beavers had some fantastic cameos, I thought that the two leads were just played so, I don't know, like I just that was even being younger than I am now, not in my 30s watching the show, but watching it when it was a new show, it was syndicated. I remember that being a turnoff, at least for me, just because the voice roles were just, I'm just like, are they not trying? Do they not know what Ren and Stimpy sound like? Do they not know what, Roger Klotz sounds like? It just sounded like kind of two guys talking and one guy doing a bit, but kind of half-assing it. That being said, the show was pretty fantastic. The episodes played out kind of along the same lines as like a watered down Ren and Stimpy, Real Monsters kind of Rugrats thing, where it was kind of MacGuffin or Daggett trying to. I'm thinking of like Muscle Beaver, where he's just like, I'm going to be a superhero one day, and then the other, the brother just being like, he's just causing so much bullshit, he's causing so much garbage that I have to kind of put myself on his level and just become a supervillain. I like that. Like the show was run well, but the voice acting took me out of it, and I couldn't enjoy it as much as some of the other franchises.
So actually, I put this in here because in episode 2, is an episode where they're damming up two rivers, the Big Happy and the Little Meanie, and so not only do they find out that water is afraid of heights, but this has one of my favorite parts, which is actually kind of your least favorite part about it, and that's totally fine. We're valid to have our own opinions.
Hey, the first ascension over an hour and a half is healthy.
Yeah. So I love that anytime there's like an authority figure or an infomercial or anyone giving instructions, it sounds ad-libbed.
Sure.
Like, that is hilarious. So I pulled out on that episode about the Big Happy, that basically the army gets them to do these dams, and at the end they get awarded by the army, and the TV announcer says, "This is almost interesting news. Throngs of happy onlookers joined the Army Corps officials today in thanking two of the country's finest citizens, Norbert and Daggett, the bravest of beavers. Because of their unflagging heroism, the country's northwest survived from devastating floods." And it's like, it sounds like whoever was on there. And there's an episode where they go to the sun to do research. They're sent as research animals, and they don't find out until later that, oh, NASA doesn't recover their research animals. And so they're like, you beavers, you MacGuffins, we actually weren't really planning on bringing you back. And like, it's just it's really funny in that fashion that
Well, that's the thing too. I didn't, I think at this point I was kind of jumping ship and going to other networks at this point, to be completely honest. And I didn't give this IP the love and attention that it probably deserves, to be fair.
Yeah. And again, it's not for everybody, but again, it's a little different. Very offshoots real quick before we log out. So this is streamable on Nick Splat, Prime, Amazon Prime, and iTunes and DVDs from Shout Factory. Shout Factory did a lot of DVDs for these early Nicktoons, so shout out to Shout Factory. But they appeared in Nicktoons Racing for PlayStation, Game Boy Advance, PC, Game Boy Color, and Arcade as playable characters. Norbert and Daggett had cameo as trophies in Nicktoons Attack of the Toybots, and they were also non-playable characters in Nicktoons MLB.
So which one, like going through all the ones that we did, I think we did 7. We didn't get to all 8, which we'll save that 8th one for the next episode. What's your favorite Nicktoon as far as that era goes, and what was your least favorite?
I think my favorite was Rocko's Modern Life, and basically just because it was very artsy. Like, like the doors all had weird curves and weird shapes, and everything had patterns for no reason. And like, it was irreverent enough, like Ren and Stimpy, without being gross. And so like it had adult humor, but like it wasn't like you would do a close up on Ren's face and there wouldn't be like craters in his face, you know. So like it was like it was cute and funny and kind of adult. And I'd say out of these, probably my least favorite, probably Rugrats. I mean, like I remember watching Rugrats a lot, but just like they're like the lips of characters, and we'll get to this when we get to Wild Thornberries, but it's like their lips are like on top of their face and it doesn't look like it's attached. Like it's just an ugly look. And again, I like it. I just can't have too much mustard.
Too much too much mustard. I totally agree. Oh man, to pick a favorite, it's almost impossible because they all have their charms, right? Like Doug, for everything why we said we loved it and why it was important. It just kind of hit in that special spot in my life where I think I have to put that above everything else. Doug is just like it's just a John Hughes film, but like spanned out over seasons and episodes. Aaahh! Real Monsters gets the award for being the most underappreciated one by far. Rocco's Modern Life is flawless. And my least favorite, probably, like I said, just because sheer proximity of time, that I jumped over to other IPs and other channels like Fox Kids and Cartoon Network and all that, was probably Angry Beavers for me. But I feel like that's unjust because I didn't give it the due diligence that it got. But oh my god, a little over an hour and a half. This has been an absolute blast. Like I said, I don't care if anyone liked this or not, because we're gonna be back, Kody. We're gonna do this again.
We're definitely gonna do it again. I do have one last question for you. And could you show me on this doll where Doug touched you?
Oh my god!
Waiting for an opening, but
oh, so good. And way early in the chat, I think it was Dr. Efren asked, did the Nicktoons have toys? And do you remember those Hot Topic toys, the Ren and Stimpy ones that you actually squeezed them and they farted?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
They were like that was fucking Tickle Me Elmo from back in the day. I was fortunate enough to, like, my parents got on the bandwagon fast enough to where they paid MSRP for them. But those, like, yeah, go try to buy a mint condition farting Ren or farting Stimpy doll now. Good luck, because that's gonna cost you probably towards the thousands. Stimpy even had the little ball of string or the oh god, what do cats do? I've been drinking, folks. The hairball attached to his tongue. Just at him.
They sold hairballs. There was a whole episode about that.
Yes.
He had to lick himself clean to supply enough hairballs.
Oh god, just disgusting. Real quick before we sign off as well, where did Fairly Odd Parents, is that going to be on the next one? Because I want to talk about that.
If we end up talking about SpongeBob, probably not, because I think we could talk about SpongeBob for about an hour.
Or just have a SpongeBob show.
Yeah, we'll have a separate SpongeBob show. But if we do Nicktoons continued, then we could definitely hit Fairly Odd Parents. Fairly Odd Parents was definitely good. And I know
Hartman.
To speak to the toys, I can get Arnold pop vinyls as well. So like at Target or Hot Topic, I'm sure they've got piles of them. But yeah, Fairly Odd Parents is definitely on my list. Jon, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for having me on to talk about Nicktoons, and yeah, it was great. I can't wait till the next one.
Oh, no problem, man. This is not having you on. This is where you live now for this show. So get comfy, get a comfy chair, get a new bottle of Old Forester, because we will be back probably sooner than later. My poor family, just all the podcasts, but it just has to happen. But sir, Mr. Kody Smith, this we don't have to wait too long to see you again, because you're going to be back on They Said We Said on Monday.
Yes, to discuss Magic: The Gathering sorts of.
Oh no, just kidding.
Yeah, no. The other part of my nerdiness, it's like my wife, tells me all the time, like she didn't know how big of a nerd I was, and it just continues to mount, like all the proof. There's so much nerd happening.
So much nerd. Yeah,
and we'll talk about it on Monday.
The Hive Mind with Fish and all the mirror folk talk with not Kody Smith. Where can I'm taking your sign off? Where can everyone find you, sir?
So I'm at not Kody Smith on Twitter, on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I actually host 2 other podcasts besides this. So Fish and a Merfolk podcast is kind of the main thing. It's a merfolk focused podcast where we discuss merfolk in Commander, Modern, Legacy, and maybe Vintage one day if we ever get there. But so that's a very oddly specific with my co-host Matt Caudill. Matt is great and knows a lot about Modern. The other one is Monkeying Around, a Simian Spirit Guide podcast, which has only had 1 episode. It's a if you remember Between Two Ferns with Zach Galifianakis, it's basically Between Two Ferns but for magic.
Oh God!
And so I don't know if I will ever do another episode of that. But it was
what an endorsement.
The 1 episode they did was great, and I think it's the highest rated show I've ever done. So it will possibly come back at some point, but that's one that maybe if it comes up, I'll do it. But maybe we'll have you on there, John.
Hey, I'm always down. Like I said, much to my family's dismay. Yeah, just great. Can't wait to see you again on Monday for the Hive Mind with Kody Smith, or at not Kody Smith. But you can find me, Jon Dunning, right here on They Said We Said. You could also find me on the Twitter at OrsOutDone. Also, that's my Reddit handle, I guess what those are called. You could also find me on Facebook and Instagram. But until next time, I usually say we'll see you at the movies, but just we'll see you illegally downloading cartoons. Talk to you guys next time.
Yeah, we'll see you next time. Everybody, bye.